It's almost hard to believe that something as devastating as cancer can come down to malfunctions in molecules so small you'd need powerful microscopes to see them. But that's exactly what happens. Cancer, at its most fundamental level, is a disease of molecular dysfunction. Understanding this scale, understanding how changes in proteins and RNA molecules that are measured in nanometers can lead to tumors measured in centimeters, really helps us appreciate both the complexity of cancer and the opportunities for intervention. Let's put the size issue in perspective. A single skin cell is roughly 10 to 30 micrometers across, already far too small to see with the naked eye. But inside that cell, the molecules that actually run the show are thousands of times smaller. A protein might be just a few nanometers in size. DNA is about 2 nanometers wide. RNA molecules are even smaller. These are the switches, messengers, and workers that control everything a cell does. When UV radiation damages these tiny molecules, it sets in motion changes that can eventually lead to cancer. The reason such small molecules have such enormous impact is that cells operate through networks and cascades. One damaged protein might fail to properly regulate 10 other proteins. Those 10 proteins might each affect hundreds of downstream molecules. A single mutation in DNA might alter the production of a protein that influences thousands of cellular processes. These molecular networks amplify small changes into large effects. Consider the p53 protein we discussed earlier. This single protein, just a few nanometers in size, controls whether a damaged cell repairs itself, pauses division, or self-destructs. Damage one molecule of p53, and if that happens to be in a cell that later divides extensively, you could end up with millions of descendants that lack proper growth control. One tiny molecular failure, massive consequences. RNA molecules are another example of tiny components with outsized importance. Some RNA molecules are just a few dozen nucleotides long, incredibly small even by molecular standards. But these small RNAs can regulate the activity of numerous genes, affecting how cells respond to stress, how fast they grow, how they interact with their environment. When UV radiation damages RNA molecules or disrupts the genes that produce them, the effects ripple outward through the entire cellular network. What's both fascinating and concerning is that cancer requires multiple molecular failures, but each failure is independent and relatively rare. The probability of any single protein being damaged by UV in exactly the wrong way is very low. But multiply that low probability by billions of cells being exposed repeatedly over decades, and suddenly unlikely events become statistically inevitable. Enough tiny molecular accidents, given enough time and exposure, will eventually add up to cancer in at least some cells. This molecular view of cancer actually provides reasons for optimism. Because cancer depends on specific molecular failures, we can potentially intervene at the molecular level. If we understand which proteins need to be protected or which RNA molecules need to maintain function, we can design prevention strategies around protecting those specific molecules. This is already happening with some research into molecular interventions that could prevent cancer even after some damage has occurred. It also means that prevention strategies that work at the molecular level, like sunscreen blocking UV before it reaches cellular molecules, are incredibly powerful. When you prevent UV radiation from reaching your skin cells, you're preventing damage to billions of tiny molecular machines that keep those cells functioning properly. Each application of sunscreen is protecting countless proteins, RNA molecules, and DNA sequences from damage. The scale disparity between tiny molecules and large diseases is a reminder that health really does come down to what's happening at the molecular level in our cells. Big problems like cancer start with small molecular failures. But that also means small protective actions, consistently applied, can prevent those molecular failures from accumulating. Understanding that cancer is fundamentally a disease of molecular malfunction helps us appreciate why prevention at the molecular level, through simple measures like sun protection, is so effective.